on behalf of EVO, we want to welcome you to this oral health community of practice session number 1. And we're really excited to have you on board. EVO, do you want to talk while you have a phone line there?
Sure. Hello. Welcome, everybody. I did not plan on anything right at this point.
Yeah. Oh, just wanted to let you know, let everyone know that you were on. Having a few little technical difficulties at EVO's end, so we're hoping that you'll stay on till the end of it. Anyway, so today we're going to focus on the oral care program gap analysis, monitoring, and evaluation strategies. And so we have lots of that are participating. So we have people from literally across the province. And I'm just going to let this come up. Pine Haven, NICU, Resident St. Louis, Villa Marconi, the Ottawa area, with Wemekong on wonderful Manitoulin Island. Oh, Victoria Village. That's a cool little map. Grove Park Home. Henley Place. And we'd ask you, what's come up is the polling, so if you could take a minute and tell us about your long-term care home a little bit and who's joined you. We very much appreciate that for monitoring. Strathmere Lodge is on. John M. Perot Center. Haven Home, doing the Weston Terrace. Albright Manor. Regina Gardens, you already said you were on, so that's great. St. Joseph's Life Care Center is planning to attend. Iroquois Lodge. Riverview Gardens, Hellenic Center for Care for Seniors. I should know how to say that better, sorry. Wenley, Rainy Crest Home over in Fort Francis there. And then Geraldton District Hospital up north. I think they're the ones getting the snow. Anyway, so why are we doing the oral care community of practice? Part of the vision to be able to optimize oral health and well-being for seniors in long-term care homes, to bring together champions and oral care champions and advisors who could, to have a discussion together to strengthen the knowledge and to increase understanding of evidence-based practice in oral care. So this is what the plan is today we're going to get ready and discover where you're at. The next month or so is going to be assessing your situation. We're going to do a higher level review of the gap analysis today, talk about some other tools that you could use to audit what's going on either with charting or even with denture labeling, toothbrushes. Then once you have your gaps identified, reflect and plan, and then put your action plan into place. Some of you might be starting right away. I know I met last couple weeks ago with a home, and they immediately discovered an issue with one of their residents with xerostomia and started right away to acquire some biotin, which is a saliva substitute. Anyway, then you're going to, sorry? You could mute your line too. Somebody that's come on is talking. If you could mute your line with *6, that'd be great. Thank you. So then at the end, in October, we're going to ask you to evaluate where you're at and then share your story. I think it's what we found in the previous community of practice with oral care is that you working in the long-term care homes have some great ideas. So now what's evidence-based practice? It's integrating EAB evidence-based practice, integrating the best research evidence, clinical expertise, patient and family values, and to facilitate clinical decision-making. So we've got this lovely diagram here that shows how they all work together. So it's not just about taking recommendations, it's really looking at what your expertise says in a situation, considering what your resident may or may not want to do. I'm sure you all have residents who prefer not to wear their dentures even though they're recommended, and then making decisions based on that. So what today's learning objectives is to understand how the RNAO best practice guidelines have been developed and how the evidence is gathered for them. We're going to give you a little bit of practice time reading the oral health best practice guidelines, and then review the gap analysis of the current oral health practices, which you will be looking at in more detail, and then describe some approaches for gathering your oral care baseline data. So what best practices are, they're systematically developed statements on recommended practice on a specific topic. They're based on the best available evidence, and they're trying to provide direction for clinical or organizational decision-making. RNAO has over 50 best practices that have been developed, and basically they're available. You can download them for free. They really help with the paper. So what's so great about best practices? What they do is
seems to be cutting out on me, and I have a fire alarm going in the background. I'll mute you again, but I'm not sure what's happening. You're cutting out.
Oh, really? Am I cutting out for anyone else?
No, you're fine here.
Okay, I'm not sure why that's happening. Sorry. Anyway, so best practices. Okay, my little click. See what's going on there. Okay, so this slide's on the process of best practice development. So what and for the oral care best practice, RNAO brought together a panel of experts to review the literature on oral care back in 2006, and they looked at the literature, did a critical appraisal of it. There's basically these literature reviews start with hundreds of articles and get whittled down to just hopefully a few hundred that the panel has to review. This expert panel comes together. They are volunteers, and RNAO tries to bring a broad spectrum of people to take part in these reviews. If you look in the oral care best practice guidelines, you can see that some of the people that were involved were dental hygienists and had different backgrounds, so that they're trying to be broad. Implementation. There's a speech language pathologist involved in this one. So anyway, so then once that literature review is completed, then recommendations are drafted. So then there's what we call a stakeholder review, and the stakeholder review is an opportunity for anyone who's interested in a best practice guideline to have a look at the recommendations and to have input on it. And if you look at this one here in the oral care on pages 4 and 5, it's got a list of several dozen people that had input, and they actually had more of a focus group in long-term care, just to really ensure that these recommendations were useful and reflected in what practitioners felt. And then finally, the last stage of the best practice development is disseminating, getting it out to everyone, making it available. So as I said, all the RNAO best practices are available online. You can download them. As your gift for participating in the oral care community of practice, each team, RNAO is going to make available to each team an oral health best practice guideline. So you'll have a hard copy to work with. And then this is the oral health one goes back to 2008. It's actually due for review, and what we're at now doing is integrating the recommendations into practice. So the way the evidence works is it's divided into sort of categories. So I like to start at the bottom of this chart, and that's expert opinion, committees, reports, opinions, or other clinical experiences of respected authorities. When you look at the recommendations and the guidelines, each one of them is assigned one of these levels. And so expert opinion is just what it says. It's groups of people who have been working in a field who all agree that the best way to do something. Sometimes this is because there's not a lot of research on certain topics. Not everything is researchable in the healthcare system. And so this is why we have to rely on expert opinion. The next level is the well-designed, non-experimental or descriptive studies. So the ones that they couldn't randomize the trials, but they take information that's available. So an example of this would be I recently saw a study by Statistics Canada where they had taken the data that was gathered in some census that had been done, and they determined that South Asian men and Black women were at higher risk of heart attack. So that was sort of population level. They were able to, you can't say that having that kind of ethnic background is going to cause a heart attack, but it's interesting in that they noticed this correlation. And so usually these kind of studies get used for, to develop more randomized control trials or to develop stronger evidence. The next levels are level two, so that there's studies don't have randomization, but they're called quasi-experimental, so that they might have a stronger experimental design. They're able to say more definitively if there's a causation involved in something, but they're not randomized. The 1A and 1B randomization is kind of the highest level, or one of the higher levels. It's where the researchers have been able to take an intervention and put it into one group and compare it to, or use it with one person and compare it to another person, either by flipping a coin and putting usually you see this with drug trials where a group of patients go into one drug trial and then a group of patients go into another where they don't use a drug or use a different drug, a comparator. Another example of randomization is over different practices. So there's a lovely one out there on with kids with otitis media, where if they blow their nose out of a balloon, that was equal to using antibiotics with them. And this was done in Britain with different family practices. So they randomized over the different practices. The highest level is systematically reviews or meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials. So these get pulled together. I'm sure you may have heard of the CoP reviews. These are, saying, hey, this is the best we know. And we're pretty sure about what's being said in that kind of a review. So out of these after that evidence, I want you to understand the evidence. RNAO comes up with three types of recommendations. First, are practice recommendations, which is what direct care staff needs to do. Next are education recommendations. So this is what staff needs to know and what staff educators or managers need to provide. And then organization and policy is just what it says, kind of programs and policies which should be put into place. So in the oral care guideline, there's 21 different recommendations. Now, I want you to pull out your oral care guideline, and Evo has sent around to you an assigned recommendation. We want you to take a few minutes and read your assigned recommendations. Look at the level of evidence and summarize it in 1 or 2 sentences. And then we're going to ask you to share and near the end of the presentation. So I have 2:14 now, and I'm going to give until about 2:18. That works for people. Does anyone have any questions about this part? So you need to crack open your best practice guideline and go to the one, the recommendation.
I think this is where we need music again, Heather.
Pardon?
This is where we need music again.
Yeah, this is where we need the elevator music. We'll sing.
I don't sing.
No.
No, you don't want to hear me sing.
Unless it's kids song. breathing loudly, Eagle?
No.
Okay.
So I know some people have recommendations that don't have as much evidence. So if anybody finishes early and would like to volunteer, that's okay as well.
Hello. Now, do we have anyone who had one of the shorter recommendations who's willing to share what they've come up with?
What was short, Heather?
Well, are you willing to just say what the recommendation was and then
Sure.
Summarize it?
Sure.
Okay.
It's Anne-Marie from Rainecrest.
Okay.
I had recommendation number 7, which was nurses provide ongoing education to the client and or family members regarding oral care. And looking at the strength and level of evidence, it had expert advice as well as some recommendations from clinical trials, but it also reported results for randomized control trial. So that would be a 1D.
Okay. And did you notice how with that number 7, they put it at a level 3 in the lower right-hand corner? So they called it a level 3. So, but it's interesting you've noticed that there's a variety of evidence there.
Right.
Yeah.
So why would the level 3 with the recommendation be different from the 1D where it says at least one randomized controlled trial?
Good question. It must have had something to do with the strength of the randomized control trial, because, from what you're saying, it would suggest that there is more evidence there to support this. That providing education to clients and families is a good thing to do.
Right.
And so the reason why we want you to look at the recommendations. The reason we've asked you to do this because we want you to look at these more detailed recommendations. It's really easy to pick up a guideline and then just look at page 10 and 11, which is the summary of the recommendations in the front, which I did for a long time with the guidelines personally. I'll confess to that. But it's as much, you get a much more in-depth understanding of what the recommendations mean if you actually read them and you start to realize that they don't all fit. So in terms of time, we have a few more minutes. I'll share it later, ask you to share later. But why the evidence, the links of the evidence, why does it matter? It's because you get more informed stakeholders, you get better conformity among staff if they understand, and everybody understands how to read the best practices, how the evidence relates to the particular recommendation. You get more support for how you could evaluate that recommendation, and the best part is the improving resident outcomes. So you've selected the best practice. Now what we all agree on, you're going to do oral care. You would be here, so you got to figure out which practice recommendations apply to your long-term care home. So you want to ask some questions. Are there already practice recommendations in place that you're doing? And I bet you're going to find this when you do a gap analysis. In my experience, excuse me, nobody is a blank table or a bare table. We're all doing some good stuff, or lots of good stuff. So are there the next question is, there any practice recommendations that are already partly implemented? And so those would be where you can put a met or unmet, or sometimes I have a closed yes and no because they're doing stuff. And then you might find some practice recommendations are not being implemented, and those you might want to focus. And the next step will be which gaps or priorities need to go first. And then the best ones, what are some quick win changes that can be made? So when I mentioned the home that I worked with a few weeks ago, well, getting some, the saliva substitute for their resident with zero stomia was a really quick win. It was just, get their pharmacy to deliver some. And then those that are not quick wins might take longer, may take more planning. So those will be what your gaps will be for the longer run. So you're going to have some bright spots. That's what you're already doing. So how do we do this? We're going to conduct a gap analysis, and that's where I want you to pull out the gap analysis that you have. Gap analysis, and then the next thing is looking at the baseline for the oral health of your residents. And then why we use the gap analysis, sorry?
It's Teresa. We looked at it, you just did the one example of the recommendation and the evidence, and now you're asking us to look at the gap analysis for this?
Yeah.
Okay, because I really see the recommendations and my gap analysis link. I don't know where Evo had shared with you, but CLRI is doing a major research project to try and verify OHAT, translation of OHAT at Residence St. Louis.
Okay, who is CL, that's
the Center of Research and
Long-Term Care Research Group. The Ministry of Health has given funding. There's SPRIDE, us, and Bayshore that I think are doing there's three sites that are involved in CLRI.
the Center of Research and Learning.
You get to check out the ones with research too.
Yeah.
Great. So, and that's very exciting. So the OHAT, for those of you who aren't familiar with that terminology, that's the Oral Health Assessment
Tool.
Thank you. And so that's that's been recommended to be used, but we do know from some work that's been done here in Hudson Bay and other places that OHAT, or that tool, doesn't necessarily line up perfectly with what RIMDS is asking.
So RIMDS doesn't always reflect what is actually happening with the residents anyway, does it?
No.
We won't go there.
Don't go there yet, Teresa.
So this is Teresa for a minute. Well, I'm going to digress from the slide. So you're really going to focus around assessment, or it's already underway. So your gap analysis in essence is somewhat done for you, eh?
Yeah, so we actually, yes, it's been great. We're well underway. We're bogged down right now because of we're implementing points of care. We're the last home in I think in the province to implement, but it's consuming a lot of our energies right now. So.
Well, yeah, there are actually a lot of homes that don't have points of care already. But the beauty of that is once you get it, you're going to be able to pretty carefully monitor things, eh?
Exactly. So we're really looking forward to that, Jeff.
Yeah. So your gap, if I can flip down a bit, is around 18. Okay.
Oh, it's going to take a long time, Heather.
Pardon?
It's going to take a long time to click through.
Here we go, 18. So healthcare organizations develop oral care standards that are based on the best available evidence and ensure they are implemented and monitored as part of the organization's commitment to providing quality oral health care and services. policy and a procedure. I believe yours can go back too if you want to. I'm just going to go backwards. Sorry to drive people crazy, but in this here, number 12.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Nurses ensure that all oral health-related history and assessment and care can be documented.
That's right. Yeah. There's 12, and then there is 17 that is a key for us as well.
Yeah.
And 3.
They have so the continuing education is a key for you too.
Yes. And primarily in terms of the research is number 3, yeah?
Yeah, and I think the research is lower, isn't it?
There's a number 19 is also participating in research.
Yeah.
I want to say it's 19.
Yeah.
19 should encourage, offer resources to participate in oral hygiene research. So I usually say skip that one because there's not that many opportunities. I hear you guys have it's available. So that's excellent. That's so good to hear. I'm really excited. I just think that's great that this is being done. So what I'm going to do, sorry?
Yes, no, we're pleased to be part of it, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go flip back to the beginning of the gap analysis, just to go over it in a bit more of a systematic way. And then, but I won't go into it in depth because you're going to have that when you meet with your best practice coordinator. That's what you'll be doing. So basically, we have a nice form for you. The first one is around being aware of oral hygiene beliefs and practices, and then and in order to help you with that, we have a staff knowledge survey that we've standardized across the community of practice. So we'll be sharing that with you in a few minutes. And the next one is around admission. The next couple are around admission assessment, and so this is part of what Teresa's group is working on too. These ones apply using a standardized, valid, or reliable oral assessment tool to perform their initial and ongoing oral assessment, and then obtaining this oral health history that includes oral hygiene, beliefs, practices, and current state of health, and that's of the client, eh? Yeah, and so, yeah. So it might come as a surprise to some of you that we don't tend to do a really good job with this oral assessment tool. Until now, it actually hasn't been a standard part of most of the programs. So the work that Teresa's involved in is very exciting to bring OHAT into the picture.
I have to be really careful. I am just a peripheral player in this. I'm on their coattails for sure.
Well, yeah, but still, it's great. So these are some considerations when you're asking this question, and this is, again, from experience that we've had in doing this gap analysis in other homes. Who's responsible for doing the oral health assessment on admission? And it's actually, like, it's somebody opening the resident's mouth, because often this is not happening. Like, nobody's really looking at their mouth. Some homes have gotten a dental hygienist involved who actually does an oral assessment. And then this whole thing of our dentures being checked for fit and being labeled on admission, and who does that? I mean, I don't have to tell you how much time is spent trying to find lost dentures, and this whole issue of labeling is a really big one, time-consuming. And then how often are dentures checked for fit and labeling? We have these tools that you can use to do self-labeling. Downside of them is if you're using the marker and putting a lacquer on top of it, it doesn't last that long, unfortunately. It probably needs to be done every quarter, so that's just time consuming. We'll be talking, once we get into that more, we'll be talking about trying to link up with a denturist to have them engraved. The next one, how often are you asking the residents to open their mouths? How confident are your staff with oral assessment? And what methodological method do they use? Is it consistent? And, as nurses, we have to admit that this is not our area of expertise, and we do need some help with this. And that's where the upcoming series on oral assessment can be so useful. Last year, when we ran the oral assessment series, people was able to put it into a survey tool so that staff could, it was archived and staff could look at it afterwards. And they didn't need to attend all the sessions. It could be done on their own time.
And we'll do that again.
Yeah, good. So then the next part is around practice recommendations about the care planning and with the resident and the family. Is the status information reviewed regularly with all members of the health team, and to monitor client progress and facilitate the development of an individualized plan of care. Are the nurses providing, and when we say nurses in the best practice guideline, we're meaning staff. These guidelines, practice recommendations don't just apply to nurses, they're for all staff. So looking at including the resident and family, who are the substitute decision maker, is there an oral or a health or dental health professional available for you to consult with? Then the next one is about ongoing education to clients and families about oral care. This one's becoming a hotter and hotter topic. Because I don't know what your experience has been, but I've certainly heard a number of stories of residents, dentures not being adjusted, families don't want to spend money, the resident doesn't think it's worth it, all of these kind of things. But what we're trying to get people to realize is that oral care is really important. Having teeth, dentures that work is important. Doing, fixing people's teeth is important for them, not only for appearance, but for being able to eat, to be able to, and even just to stay healthy. Rotten teeth cause infections in our body. Other considerations you might want to think of is you have a brochure that you give on admission. Some homes have a relationship with a dental hygienist and they provide that brochure. Is oral care discussed at the 6-week conference? Is it include this information on oral care put into a newsletter maybe annually? Is it reviewed at the oral care reviewed at the annual care conference? Is there a presentation done at the resident and family councils? How is information being distributed there, or do you have a way that you're doing it? Another sort of up and coming trend now is including capacity and consent with oral care. There's a project called the Dental Elder Abuse Response Project, which is suggesting that elderly people should develop a plan around how they want dental care or oral care to occur, and even if they happen to develop dementia. Now, supplies. This is a big one. Nurses provide or remind or queue oral care for residents at least twice daily on a routine basis, and having some kind of documentation that this is going on is pretty important. And that the documentation be accurate. Right now, the last report that we have on RIMDS that was done on a province-wide basis suggested that 97% of residents are getting twice daily oral care, and some of us don't think that's accurate. A lot of people really are wondering if that's true, and it may be because it's being charted that oral care is being done, but certainly assessments of residents, haven't really borne that out to be true. The next part about this oral care, a lot of times residents are thought to be doing their own oral care. It's important to assess how often is the effectiveness of their brushing assessed. And are they really remembering to do oral care? I did worked with our local dental hygienist here, Linda McEwen, and we did some together, this was several years ago, did assessments of some residents' mouths, and one of the residents must have had the best teeth in the whole long-term care home, but they were absolutely filthy, and she swore that she was brushing her teeth, and it was because her dementia was starting. She had really forgotten that she had brushed her teeth because she just wasn't remembering. So most times residents can do a reasonably good job, but they might need to be cued and might need to be checked. Then the oral hygiene products. So this one, I've mentioned the one on xerostomia. There's other things like we see the, we're having a blank here, swabs that are still being used the two sets that are still being used fairly commonly to give care. They're not recommended, something you might really want to consider getting rid of or just using for palliative patients that seem to run, once they're available in a home, they do seem to get used, but their two sets are not very effective, and they're also a risk, there's a choke risk with them. There's also some new products often, available that staff may or may not know about. Like saliva substitutes, do they know what staff should be using for palliative or end-of-life care? The next ones are around risk factors. So nurses supervise the provision of oral care for residents at risk for aspiration. Sometimes that is not necessarily put onto the care plan so that PSWs would know that maybe the resident shouldn't have toothpaste, that they should be using an alternative for brushing their teeth that doesn't cause problems that they aspirate it. That's what I said. They should be using water or mouthwash. This area to be aware of the effects of treatments and medications. This is a really big one. Looking at how medications are given, are they crushed? Does that affect the efficacy of that medication? What are you using to give that medication, like applesauce, pudding? And is there anything, that is that being allowed to sit on the teeth? Are they are the mouths being rinsed afterward? What's on the snack cards? Like all of these kind of things that can really affect the oral health of residents. One home shared with me that using things like Ensure can have a very deleterious effect on residents' mouths if there's no rinsing after those. They're very high sugar drinks, and we know that they're important, but we also need to think of the impact on the oral health of the residents using them. This one is on technique, referral, and documentation. So there's different techniques that can be used for residents with dementia. There's some specialized things like the toothbrush technique for residents who bite, the hand-over-hand technique, which is about for residents who need who can hold the toothbrush but maybe need some guidance to a thorough job. There's other methods that could be looked at for residents with more advanced dementia to be able to not restrain them, but to work together with them to help them to brush their teeth, like sitting them in front of a mirror. Then there's the whole issue around referral or for clients who require consultation with an oral health professional. And so looking at what's your system for determining a referral, when and who does it. And then I mentioned this earlier about available dental professionals or dental hygienists and dentists on admission and during the annual dental care conferences. I know that one of the homes in Midland told me that compliance had cited them or had noted that in their report that they needed to be doing that in a more formalized way. And then making sure that documenting the history and care is there. And that often this involves PSWs. There's an issue around residents who refuse to wear their dentures or have oral care provided. This is really important to be figuring out why. Some homes have gone to the point where if a resident refuses oral care, they actually make a referral to the behavior support unit to try to figure out what's going on. I've personally seen a case where the resident actually had a large infected area in their mouth, and that's why it was hurting, so they weren't refusing. That's why they were refusing oral care. So it can't just be no. It needs to be okay if they refused it, oral care. Why? And let's need to try to get to the bottom of that and have a process for or more days in a row, what's going on with that resident. The next batch of recommendations are around education, what kind of oral education is done, and looking at your whole policies, having additional opportunities, and what will be contributing into this community of practice is some opportunities for education. We'll be doing assessments for the next until January, the next 3 webinars, and then we're going to have one on responsive behaviors, and then on the oral care toolkit. The next one's on policies and procedures. Do you have a policy and procedure for oral health? The home I worked with a couple weeks ago, that was one of their highest priorities, to put something into place. And then looking at how you implement and monitor the best practice. So we'll be talking lots about that shortly. And then using things like gap analysis, audits to monitor and evaluate as part of your QI approach or your quality management approach. Some homes have gone to the point of putting oral care improvement into their quality improvement plan. The partnerships, we've talked about this, so I'm not going to mention it too much more. We've had very fruitful partnerships last year in the Champlain-Lynn. EVO was able to connect homes with the Algonquin College Dental Hygiene Program, and they were able to provide additional assistance. We got a little bit of funding, and they were able to go into long-term care homes with students and faculty and actually help with residents to teach them how to do oral care assessments. So looking out for those opportunities is a great idea. Another one that's come up just lately is like we're looking at health units being able to support you with some education. Not all health units will focus on seniors, but some will, and they're a source that sometimes we don't think about. We've talked about the research, so I'm not going to spend much time here. And then this whole last one is about developing a plan, and this is what we're doing in this community of practice. That we know your organization is dedicated to implementing the oral care best practice for which to be here. Some of the things you might want to consider under this, though, is financial or resources. Where can funds come from? One home, did you want to talk about that, Evo, the home that figured out how to come up with a plan for financing dental hygiene care?
Yeah, so one home works with their dental hygienist, and what they do is they set up a fund with the families that every month there's a certain amount that goes into it. So by the time they hit their annual cleaning, the money's already there and available, and they do the cleaning. So that was a creative solution that they came up with. Another home that is a charitable-based home, or a faith-based, home, they have a special fund that people can contribute to, and they've kind of divided out a section that is related just to oral care. So if they ever have an emergency situation or someone who doesn't have the funds to be able to afford it, they can go to this and use that as their emergency fund in a sense. So there's some creative solutions that you can come up with for thinking about how you might be able to do oral care for people who either don't have the funds or their families refuse, but they really need the care to be done.
Yeah, and don't overlook things like benefit plans that might have, some people have really good benefits that continue to include dental and oral care, and Veterans Affairs that sometimes can be covered. I've mentioned this whole issue of capacity and consent, and so looking at that, you might want to consider incorporating some of that into your admission process. Now we've talked to Teresa, shared where they're at. Have any other homes already done a gap analysis? And what did you want to share what your thoughts were on that?
Or did anybody have any aha moments from reading their assigned practice recommendation that they know that they might have to do something about, or that they figured they have something in place? That's a good bright spot.
Yes.
Bless you.
Is everybody feeling overwhelmed at this point, like nothing's going right? Is that how you're feeling? Oh, yeah, maybe we should say how to unmute too, eh, people?
Heather, it certainly is a challenge, but I know that the staff at Residence St. Louis recognize this as a huge issue for the residents. So we're really looking forward to having the opportunity of implementing the BPG to improve this.
Yeah, good. Okay, good. Just so everyone else knows, you need to go to *7 to unmute if you're still muted.
Or *6 sometimes.
Or *6 sometimes works as well.
Yeah.
On your feet, left everybody muted. Nobody can get back on.
Heather, it's Sue Bailey. I just want to ask, for the gap analysis, is it expected that when the homes go through it, they'll see what they're already doing well and they'll focus on just a few, like 2 or 3 of the recommendations to work on?
Yes, that's it. Exactly.
So not the entire thing, so they shouldn't be shocked.
No, that's right.
Oh, and I mean, even if there are a lot, you're going to have to prioritize. And you know, it becomes fairly apparent which is the highest priority for you for in a home. So yeah, it definitely needs to pick and choose. And I mean, the plan can be a longer term plan too. I mean, you really have a year or so to do a plan. Excuse me, if you're doing an annual evaluation. But it's not to overwhelm you. It's to say, hey, what do you need to do now?
I'm excited for the sharing as well. Things like brochures, rather than everybody reinventing the wheel. If there's things already out there that we could maybe adapt or use as well.
Good. Yeah, because there's actually tons of stuff out there. The toolkits will be the new and improved toolkits will be released next week by RNAO or relaunched. So there's stuff that you can already start looking at on oral care. Okay, then I'm going to charge ahead with the next section, which is sources of oral care data. Because we want you to take a little bit of a look at this in the beginning. Evaluation is incredibly important. It's one of the recommendations, but it's also important for you to be able to track, to know that you're making a change and to start have some baseline data. So the first one is the RIMDS data, and this is what you can get. These are the kinds of reports that you can get out of RIMDS on Section K if there's a chewing, swallowing problem or a mouth pain or complaints about the taste of food. And then Section L is the one that really focuses around oral care, like having debris in the mouth prior to going to bed at night, having dentures or removable bridge, having some or all of natural teeth loss, does not have or use dentures or partial plates. This is, I think it was Teresa or somebody that pointed out earlier that RIMDS has limitations, and this is one of them because they don't account for that people could have both dentures and teeth. Then the whole broken, loose, or carious teeth, and then inflamed gums, swollen or bleeding gums, oral abscesses, ulcers, or rashes, and then daily cleaning of teeth or dentures or daily mouth care by staff or residents. And this is where that statistic I referred to earlier. The other section that's important is around resisting care. So this point about if they're not having oral care done or refusing oral care, you could possibly trigger this E4 section. So these are some places to go in RIMDS to get some data to start you off. This is what the coding of it looks like. You can take your information and look at or put it into a little form like this so that you know the numbers of residents with chewing problems, with mouth pain, The next one you can use is your electronic or flow sheet data. Teresa referred to getting point of care into place. And this is, I mean, it has some very, point of care in particular has some pretty strong reporting abilities, but, you know, don't discount what Medicare, Gold Care can do as well.
And point of care.
Available that you can get from your existing system.
And Heather, I'll just add that point of care, too, is somewhere where you could look for information as well.
Yeah, okay, good. The next one is doing chart audits. We have a form for you like this where you can sit down and do the old-fashioned look and see what's in here. These are all the different aspects of the assessment and care planning that would be included that you can see is that actually being done in our care plan. These are not have-to-do tools either. I just want to make this really clear. These are suggestions. These are things that are available should you choose to use them. We've focused a little bit more on you know, this chart audit, looking at the health beliefs or routines. Are there routines documented? Is there dental history documented? Is there a contract with oral care professionals in the chart? Has it been discussed on admission? Have the dentures been labeled? And then the whole next section is all around the planning, type of assistance, the type of equipment, techniques and strategies that might work, and is the risk of aspiration identified. The next one that's kind of fun is the supply audit. Homes have found this to be a very interesting one to look at. You know, are there actually toothbrushes? Are they labeled? Are they in reasonably good condition? When Linda McCune and I did this with one of the homes, the dental hygienist I talked about earlier, it was amazing how many really old toothbrushes. I wish we'd taken pictures with, you know, one that was so flat and the toothbrush looked like I don't know, like the crazy hair on the, you know, a wig going, and the toothbrush, the brush bristles going out in all directions. And then looking at dentures, are they present? Like, did they make it through to long-term care? Are they labeled? What do they look like? Do they have a denture cup? Is it labeled? Is it clean? One source of infection sometimes we don't think about are these denture cups. They should be changed when you've had if you've had an outbreak or if the resident has been ill. And then things like toothpaste, is it present? Is it labeled? Ditto for the mouthwash. Is there a cup? Is there moisturizer? Where are the oral care supplies in that particular residence room? One thing that some homes have gone to is keeping the oral care supplies in the same place in all of the residence rooms, so staff know where they are. Helps speed things up. So this could be an interesting audit. This oral health knowledge survey is one that we're going to suggest that you do with your staff. What we ask you to do is, and the best practice coordinator will help you, is to complete this survey with as many staff as you can. It's just a one-page. It's a one-pager, even though it looks a bit big. And it does give a really nice baseline data about where people were at in terms of not only their knowledge needs, but some of their beliefs and attitudes. So it helps to meet that first recommendation.
And it's really nice to help with your education planning, because that way, say staff are all comfortable with using a toothbrush, you don't have to do education on how to use a toothbrush, because you'll be able to identify where those areas are that you should really focus on. Yes,
and like some things like saliva, in the past, things like saliva substitutes have come up that people don't know what those are at all, because they're relatively new products. Then you can look at resident family questions, interviews, looking at any complaints you've had, looking at your compliance findings. The compliance is assessing oral care with the personal support worker inspection protocol. There's about 5 or 6 questions there that pertain directly to oral and dental care. Those are a good thing to monitor with, because you know, those questions you could continue to monitor. They line up fairly nicely with the best practice guideline and with RIMDS as well. So the
next steps for your team are to work, to find a time to meet with your best practice coordinator to work together on your gap analysis. We just stated over the surface today. Look at, figure out when you can do the oral health knowledge survey with your staff. My suggestion with this one is to use those odd minutes, just hand them out. I found with a couple of the homes, treat helped. Candy worked really well. It was sort of an odd thing to say for an oral health survey. Pens are pretty, people like those too, but you know, if there's a bit of an exchange, they're often happy to fill them out. And then your best practice coordinator is going to help you to gather and analyze any baseline data that you might have, you want to look at. And the next dates that we're meeting for education are November 4th and 25th, and then December 2nd, we'll all come back together. So are there any questions? Oh, and we've got the poll at the side, so if you could complete the poll, that would be useful. So I'm really hoping it doesn't seem overwhelming, because when you go through it step by step, it isn't as overwhelming as it looks in this last hour, honestly. You know, approaching it a little bit at a time with the help of your best practice coordinator is quite doable.
Heather, I have a question. It's Sue Bailey. In a home with a large number of residents, is it possible just to select, you know, a few residents or 10 or whatever to do the audits on?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. It's not like we don't require those audits too. And thank you for asking that question. That tool is there for you to use as long-term care homes to use as you see fit. It's a tool that's been developed, so we're sharing it.
And my other question is, for those that just joined the COP this week, will they be mailed out an oral care best practice guideline?
Yeah, or given what the best practice coordinators will bring one out when they come. Okay, we're going to do it. Yep.
And the
then you're going to get as well DVD on oral care with dementia, and then oral care for residents with xerostomia, dysphagia, and something else. Sorry, that one in front of me. There's 3 things in that one.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Are you feeling overwhelmed?
Yes.
Yes. Oh no.
Energized.
Oh, good. Yeah, because honestly, I hope you don't feel overwhelmed, because it does work it out, and you know, you're not going to do all 21 recommendations at once. It's really looking and saying, what's the most important thing we need to be doing right now? And last time with the communities of practice, really, what homes tended to focus on was trying to improve oral assessment skills, denture, you know, getting the dentures labeled, the toothbrushes labeled, and coming up with systems for rotating the toothbrushes. There's all sorts of creative ways of replacing the toothbrushes quarterly. You know, really, it's about eating the elephant, so to speak, a few bites at a time, not to try to do the whole thing. So, Ivo, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, our next meeting is about actually looking at and prioritizing and setting those aims and looking at coming up with a plan on how to move forward. So right now, the only focus that we're asking is to finalize the gap analysis and start looking at some of your baseline. That's all, and come ready to start talking about where everybody's at.
Good, thank you. So I think we are at 3 o'clock, and if we don't have any more questions, we ask you to complete the exit poll there to give us feedback. That's very helpful. And thank you for your attention, and I hope you're excited about moving forward on this.
Me too. It's actually a fun little guideline.
Thanks very much. You're welcome.